Cool.
Chris, I didn't turn it on. Did you turn it on? Sure? Okay. Well, I'm going to turn it on.
Sure.
I'm making sure.
How are you guys? Good. How are y'all traveling? Where y'all working?
we're finished. The service.
They're putting
Special
right.
coffee. We serve and to each other. We're praying God's giving.
Amen. You guys can all have a seat. My name is John, and I'm a fellow house church leader here. I also am an ultimate player on Fridays, which I see Mark Strong and Chris Millar out there hustling hard, and Talon, lots of other people. I'll announce the time and day of that later when we go to the announcements. But first of all, welcome to every single guest that are here. Anybody new here? You can raise your hand. Woo! Ty! Awesome. Welcome. I'm very glad that you guys are here. If you guys want to have some more information about the well, you can text 94,000 to the well, one word. And we give you all the news and updates that you can ask for. 94,000, that's right. All right, I'm gonna look at my notes real quick. Getting connected. So, here at the well, we like to grow together. Growing together can come in many forms. You can join a house church. You can get baptized. You can request prayer. All these things you can do through texting 94,000 at the well if you have any questions. We also, if you're new here, we have a free gift for you at the Yes table back there. So after the service, come to the Yes table and we can talk through all those things through you, and you can also text 94,000 to the well. As far as weekly announcements, October 5th and 7th, or 5th through 7th, is a marriage retreat. So if you guys are married and want to have some nice growing together time, I went to one last year, not married, and then I ended up getting married. So it was awesome. It will do a lot. As far as August 20th is this will be a Sunday, and it'll be a kickoff Sunday where we're gonna have bounce houses, cornhole, probably 9 square, maybe pickleball. That's big news. And then also there'll be a free lunch to kind of finish off this 21-day fast. So yeah, I highly encourage you guys to come up. And I'm going to give the mic to Jacob to explain something great.
John, it's kind of hard to follow you for announcements. Hey church fam, my name is Jacob Crawford, and I have the privilege of serving as the Associate Pastor of College and Discipleship here. And if I had not met you, I'd love to meet you, so come say hi afterwards. One of the cool things we get to do as a ministry is support our college students, and they're coming back. And the Bobcats will be back very soon. So one of the things that we wanted to invite y'all to join in on is we will be throwing a bingo afternoon for our students on August 14th. That's next Monday, not this coming Monday, but next Monday. And one of the things that we would love to do is provide care packages for the winners of the bingo game. So if y'all would, we would love to ask y'all if you consider getting some gift cards or candy bars, or even like John said, if you want to go all out, pay for someone's rent.
First month's rent.
That would be awesome. But things like coffee makers, little griddles, I know they make those mini waffle makers, so we would love for you guys to provide some really cool prizes. So if you're interested in that, please come talk to me. I'll be back by the Yes table, and then y'all can bring them next Sunday, and then we'll have them ready for Monday. Sound good? Cool. Let's support our students, and let's jump back into worship.
You guys can stand up and continue to worship with us. Again, we're so glad that you're here.
You restore scripture reading today is Matthew 7:12 through 23. It says, "So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow, and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So, every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will recognize them by their fruits. Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name?' And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness.'"
Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning, God, recognizing our need for you. God, as we've just done, Lord, would you help us to actually live that out in our hearts and our minds, Lord God, to actually place everything that we are and everything that we have on the table before you. So say, God, we surrender. And so, Lord, I pray for us now as we transition to time in your word, Lord God, would you open our hearts, would you open our minds to the work that you want to do in us and among us. God, I can't do that work, but your word can, and your spirit can. And so, God, would your spirit fill this place this morning. Yes. God, we declare that your word is profitable for teaching, for correction, for reproof, and for training in righteousness. And so, God, would you train us?
Yes.
Would you correct us, God? Would you teach us? Would you equip us, Lord? God, we declare that your word is sharper than any two-edged sword, able to do a sanctifying surgery within us, Lord God. So would you cut into our hearts this morning?
Yes.
You might take out that which is dead or decaying within us and place within us your truth and your spirit, Lord God. God, we need you to move. Especially with such a weighty text as this, God, we need you to move. And so, Father, where we are far too comfortable, would you discomfort us a bit this morning? And God, where we're sorrowful, would you comfort us? God, you alone know every need among us today, and you alone can meet them. So we look to you to do what only you can today, for your glory and our joy. In Jesus' name. We said together.
Amen.
Amen. You guys can take a seat, and if you've got kiddos in between the ages of 6 weeks or 6th grade, we would love to bless you by blessing them to go hang out with Sean Walker. What a time. J.D. Killian. Just make your way over there to an age-appropriate discipleship experience. Good to see you, Grayson. Looking good today.
Thank you, Gary.
Well, hey, how are we? Doing all right?
Great.
Excellent. Okay, good to see you. It's good to be together. And, man, I just love this church. I'm grateful to be a part of this church. And grateful that you are here. If you are here for the very first time, I will tell you, I'll be hopefully one of the first to tell you, I think there's wonderful other churches in the city. We're actually praying today for one that is kind of moving to Sunday mornings. It's a big Sunday today, launching in Bowie Elementary. I think it's elementary, Bowie Elementary. Out in Cottonwood Creek, Landmark Church with my dear friend Ryan Azzardo. And man, we just ask you to be praying for them as well as they move from Sunday nights to Sunday mornings and begin to engage a bit more publicly in our city. And so just rejoicing with them for what the Lord has done among them. But if you are new here and you're looking for a church, I'll just say this, and then we're going to jump in. We would say this church exists to multiply disciples of Jesus that are reaching the campus, the city, and the world. We do that by helping one another say our next yes to Jesus, through enjoying God, growing together, which you heard joyfully about from John, and living on mission. It's been interesting over the past couple weeks. There have been folks who have joined our church or checking it out, and I'm just saying we don't offer a lot of flashy programs. But here's what I think this church offers in a really powerful and beautiful way, is a really meaningful relationship. Because we're just convinced that discipleship runs on the tracks of obedience and relationship. And I think this church offers relationship really well. But relationship takes time. Relationship's not something you can really sniff out in one Sunday. And so just encourage you, if you are new here, if you're kind of wondering, hey, is this a church for me? Pray about that. And if it's not, that's just fine. That's great. But don't spend like a whole semester shopping around for churches. Just find some relationships that are going to help you say yes to Jesus, and just get after following him. Okay? I several years ago had the opportunity to go whitewater rafting down the Zambezi River. And my dad is home nation is Zimbabwe. If you're unfamiliar, in between Zimbabwe and Zambia is the Zambezi River, which is home to Victoria Falls, some of the most majestic and powerful waterfalls in all the earth. And my brother and I, my dad and my aunt had the really incredible opportunity to go whitewater rafting down the Zambezi River. How many of you have been whitewater rafting before? Anybody? Okay, wow. I'm surprised that's awesome. Anyone done the Zambezi? That wasn't meant to be like a flex, but I'm not a risk taker by nature. I'm not a thrill seeker. Maybe I'm a risk taker. I'm not a thrill seeker. I don't really like heights. I don't like stepping into situations that could actually kill me. And this was one of those. The Zambezi River is no joke. Lots of class 4, class 5 rapids. And oh, by the way, there's crocodiles and hippos. And so, if you've ever played the game Hungry Hungry Hippos, just imagine like whitewater rafting through those things, okay? And so, before we go down into the river basin and get on our rafts, we have a pretty significant orientation. And we had to sign away our lives to say like, hey, we won't be mad if any of us die. And so you just, sign your name on a little sheet of paper, and you're in Africa, and who knows what could happen. But you feel comfortable. These guys are all like super jacked. They've been doing this for years. And they give us a pretty stout orientation. There's some video training. And it's just like, you can kind of see in their eyes like they're hoping we would take this seriously. This training part. Because of what was coming in our future. They knew what the river held. We did not know. We didn't know what this was going to be like, what this was going to feel like, but they were very well acquainted with what was going to happen on this river. And it was their responsibility to teach us and warn us and train us that we might be prepared for the journey that was ahead. And so they're doing all this orientation. I'm not like a kid, but I'm not a full-grown adult. And I've got pretty serious butterflies in my stomach at this point. And I'm like, man, they're talking like this is really hardcore. And they're being really intentional to tell us a variety of things. And what are they really doing? They're telling us how we're going to make it safely to the end. They're saying, hey, you need to pay attention to this part, and then there's going to be some really big rapids, and here's what we're going to do in those moments. And if you listen to my voice and do what we tell you today, you will make it safely to the end. We've done this hundreds of times. No one's died, except that one guy, but we don't talk about it. But you'll make it safely to the end if you do what we tell you. We come to this text in Matthew chapter 7. We're nearing the end of the Sermon on the Mount, wrapping up our series of the culture of the kingdom. And in many ways, what Jesus is doing is he's saying, hey, I need you to listen close. Because there are some really big dangers on the road ahead, and I am pleading with you to listen, that you might make it safely to the end. And I would imagine all of us longs for safety. Even the thrill seekers among us, at the end of the day, have some fears. We have some concerns of like, what if this happens, or what if this happens? All of us have a longing for safety throughout our lives. I would imagine for most of that, that feels like physical safety. I don't know if any of y'all live out closer towards Kyle or Wimberley, but man, my family and I were standing out our window last night watching planes fight that fire.
Yeah.
And there was a part of me, not really experiencing forest fires that close before, that was actually pretty scared. Of like, hey, I know it's pretty dry outside. Like, it doesn't seem like it'd take that much for an ember to just jump over and really take out some stuff. And there was a fear for safety in my heart last night. And how much more should we be concerned about our eternal safety? What's going to happen to us after this life? And how can we know that we're going to make it safely to the end? That in reality, you and I can, if we really stop and think about it, know that this life is here today and gone tomorrow. We know that. We hide it, we don't talk about it, but we know it deep inside. And perhaps the real question, the better question we should be asking today is, how can I make it safely all the way to the other side? Knowing that this text ends this morning with Jesus saying, hey, depart from me, for I did not know you. How do we make it safely to the end? That's what we're going to be looking at this morning in Matthew chapter 7, verses 12 through 23. So if you have your Bibles, I hope you do, turn there with me. Matthew chapter 7, verses 12 through 23. How can we make it safely to the end? Jesus begins in this way in verse 12. So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. I won't spend a lot of time here. We're going to see four things that either questions we need to ask or principles we need to apply. We're going to make it safely to the end. The first one is this. We need to treat others how we want to be treated. We need to treat others how we want to be treated. I think about being on this whitewater rafting trip, and I think about, hey, like, it doesn't matter if you knew the people or didn't know the people that you're getting on the raft with. By the end of the first rapid, that's your family. And you're going to take care of each other. And you want those people looking out for you. You want those people, hey, watch out, there's a huge rock coming. Hey, look out, that actually is a hippo. That's not a rock. Like, hey, you want people to do that for you. And when Jesus is saying, hey, all the things that you want to happen for you, you should do those for other people. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but here's what I do want to say, just a real practical challenge. What is something that you would love to happen to you? Like, I would imagine for parents in the room, you're like, man, I would love a date night with free childcare. For a lot of young people in the room, I would want someone to help me move. Like, I'm about to move into a new place, and I could use some help with that. Or I could really use someone to just listen and ask me some questions about what's going on in my life without trying to dominate the conversation or fix it all. Like, what are some things that you want to happen in your life right now? Just think about that for a second. What are some things that you would be really pumped if they happened to you? Maybe if someone paid for your rent. Like, what would that look like? Think about just some things you want. Some things you'd love to happen this week. Now, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. You go do that thing for somebody else. That's what Jesus is saying. Hey, the things that you really want, go do that thing for somebody else. And guys, I wonder what would happen in our church fam and in our city if we actually just applied that. If we just said, hey, every week, I'm just going to try once a week. Maybe you're crazy, you do less. I'm going to try this every day. But maybe just once a week, you're going to try to do something for someone else that you would really love for someone to do to you. I talk about church culture in this way. Hey, be the church that you want the church to be. So a lot of times it's easy to walk into a church and be like, no one talked to me, or like, they didn't sit with me, or this or that. I'm not like coming down on you. But like, hey, just start being the community that you long community to be. We talk about this with our kiddos for friendship. Like, hey, be the friend that you want other people to be to you. Bonhoeffer has a quote, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, that your dream of community will kill it, but your love will help it flourish. Oftentimes, I think we walk into spaces like this and we think, here's what I want it to be. And we never do the things that would actually take it there. We just sit from the sideline and critique or judge instead of jumping in the game and getting after it. And Jesus says, hey, if we're going to make it for the long haul, if we're going to make it safely to the other side, then we need to treat others as we want to be treated. And so, just for practically, again, I'll iterate. What is that for you? And then do that for someone else this week. Just find a way to say, hey, I would love for this to happen for me. I'm going to actually do that for someone else this week. Conveniently in my life, I'm going to take someone to Sakura. Because I want that to happen. After the 21 days of fasting and prayer. All right. Verse 13 and 14, Jesus says this, enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. If we're going to make it safely to the end, not only do we need to treat others the way we want to be treated, but we need to enter through the right gate. We need to enter through the right gate. I think the principle is pretty straightforward and it doesn't need a ton of explanation. So let me just actually illustrate it in a variety of cultural things that you and I might face. We know this principle to be true. That there is a narrow gate that is hard and it leads to life. There is a wide gate and it's easy that leads to death. Let's just begin with the low-hanging fruit of physical health. I am blown away at how easy it is to drift towards unhealth physically. I would imagine there's others among us here today that have had a season in your life like, I'm going to go hard. I'm going to do all the dieting, all the exercise, and I'm going to be who I really want to be, and I'm going to be eating right, get my head on straight, and then you get there and it feels awesome. And then it takes about 3 weeks for that to start fading. Been there before? And you go, man, the way was hard to get here. And it's real easy to not. The wide gate, the easy life looks like laziness. And laziness is shockingly easy. Is it not? I would imagine if you're anything like me, it's kind of a default. Like you just default to laziness. I wish I didn't, y'all. I wish I was like, I just woke up every day like, okay, I'm ready to crush some workouts and make some gains. But no, it's just easier to default to laziness. The gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, is it not? It's easier to write people off when they upset you. It's much harder to press in and do the hard work of relational perseverance through forgiveness and understanding. The gate is wide and easy that leads to destruction. Think about how easy it is to go, yeah, I'm done with that person. They said something I didn't like, yeah, I'm done with that. Friendship is actually really hard. Having lots of acquaintances that think you're awesome because they don't actually know really anything about you is pretty easy. But real meaningful friendship, where the sparks fly in conversations sometime, where you find out you disagree, or you said something and you really hurt the other, and now you've got to figure out how to move towards each other once again, that is really hard. But for those of you that have relationships like that have been through tough seasons and good seasons, you know that friendship, hard fought for friendship, leads to life. And if you and I are going to make it safely to the end, we need to hear the instructions of our Lord saying, hey, enter through the narrow gate. It is hard, but it leads to life. We need to hear an equally warn, hey, do not enter through the wide gate. It'll be easy, but it leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many. I went floating down from Lions Club to the Rapids with my children. Had a nice little educational moment with my 4-year-old daughter about marijuana at 10:30 a.m. And not mine, just to be clear. People right next to us. I was with my dad and Pete, and we're floating down the river. And guys, it's been a minute since I've been floating, and I just forget how sad it actually can be. I was like, wow. Like you have like a bottle of Malibu and a bag of joints at 10:30 a.m. What is so painful that you need to done it this early in the day? Do you know how easy that is? Some of you are like, yeah, I do. I was actually over here. There's a bag of them. It's so easy. And I don't say that condemningly. I say that as a guy who was taking the easy road over and over and over again and found out, oh, this leads to that. Do you know how easy it is, fellas, to get lazy with your eyeballs? And go, no, it's okay to look at that. It's okay to look at that. It leads to that. Do you know how hard it is to discipline your mind and your heart? And say, this is what self-control looks like. The gate is wide, and it's easy that leads to destruction. And guys, we know this. We know this. And I would just plead with us. I think Jesus is pleading with us. Hey, I know the gate is narrow, and I know the road is hard, but there's life there to be found. There's rich, beautiful life to be found. So I'll just encourage you, do the harder thing. It's going to be better. Do the harder thing. It's going to be better. I think about hiking. And for those who have been exploring or gone to like national parks or things like that, like the views are always better after the harder hike, are they not? When you have to really work at it to get all the way up to that summit and look over the glory and splendor of the mountain peaks, like that hard work led to this feeling of fullness of life. God has woven this into our DNA. We know that hard things often lead to life. But our bodies default to laziness. They default to the easy way. Guys, if we're going to make it safely to the end, we need to enter through the narrow gate. So do the hard thing. Do the hard thing. Break up with a boyfriend or girlfriend that you know you shouldn't be with. Do the hard thing. Get out of the living situation that you know is leading to death. Do the hard thing. Look your spouse in the eyes and beg for forgiveness for years of foolishness and idolatry, and do the hard thing. And say, hey, I've been wrong and you were right, and it's time for me to be who God made me to be. Do the hard thing. Call the family member that takes you off for the 100th time and try turning towards them again. Do the hard thing. Look the roommate in the eyes that you wrote off last semester when they never washed a dish. Wash the dishes again and do the hard thing. I'm not saying blow out boundaries, anything like that, but you know what I'm talking about. Delete the apps, invite some people in, and do the hard thing. Jesus says there's life on the other side. I think back to the Zambezi River, and whenever we were approaching a rapid, they would tell us to tuck our feet in under the little tube in front of us, and then get ready to paddle hard. And that seemed crazy. Like if we flip, my feet, my hairy hobbit feet, are going to be stuck underneath that tube. And I will be in big trouble. And you want me to paddle? I'm going to be freaking out, like ducking into the raft. Like, you're asking me to do something that seems counterintuitive. But that very action led us to navigating the rapids successfully. The hard thing, the narrow gate, leads to life. The wide gate, the easy road, almost always leads to destruction. If you and I are going to make it safely to the other side, we need to treat others as we want to be treated, and we need to enter by the narrow gate. Read with me now in 15. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. So just for clarification, because it surprised me as I jumped in, he's warning against false prophets, about who we listen to, about who we go to for information and instruction. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Some of you are like, I actually don't know, Jesus. Never picked grapes or figs. Well, the answer is no, they're not. Verse 17. So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will recognize them by their fruits. The third thing that you and I need to know, or the question we need to ask if we're going to make it safely to the other side, is what tree am I eating from? What tree am I eating from? And you're like, well, that's not really helpful. You might ask it another way. What voices am I listening to? What voices am I listening to? Who's leading you? Who's instructing you? Who's teaching you? Again, jump back with me to the Zambezi whitewater rafting experience. There was a reason that we would go, yeah, I'm going to trust these guys. Why? Because they do this every day of their lives, and they've carried hundreds of thousands of people safely to the other side. The fruit of their teaching was life. So I go, yeah, I'm going to do what they say. I'm not going to do what I think I should do. I don't do things like this very often. But they do this every day. I can trust them because they have carried many safely to the other side over and over and over again. I would ask you to consider, who are the voices that are leading you? What voices are leading you? What tree are you eating from, and what is that fruit like? And if I may just gently press into some cultural things here as well. And again, whenever I make comments like this, I want to be really clear. I'm not saying things like this in shameful condemnation to say, oh, this horrible culture that's godless and full of idols. I'm saying this in a pleading way to restore to God's good design. Okay? But I think there's a couple voices or cultural narratives or unhealthy trees that we are eating from, perhaps even unknowingly in our culture today. The first one would be called, you live your truth. You live your truth. How many of you have heard you live your truth? As though you have a different truth than other people's truths. This is all kind of the result of postmodernity and a variety of things that have taken place in the 50s and 60s that have led us now to a highly individualistic culture that has culminated in you living your truth. And my friends, I would actually warn that this is a deadly tree. If you don't believe me, let's just look at some data. For those, I'm not even talk like big data, let's just talk personal life stories here, more experiential data. For those that are living their own truth, how's that going for them? We are seeing an unprecedented rise in anxiety and depression. We're seeing staggering numbers of suicide. We're seeing staggering numbers of loneliness. And I would go, hey, that's called fruit. I think it's coming from a diseased tree that says you live your truth. And so we talk about this here, not in some type of condemning, shameful way, but in a pleading way. When we apply that to sexuality, and we say you live your truth, like you decide your sexual boundaries, you decide your sexual morals, you decide what is going to be good for you in the context of sexuality, you decide gender, you decide all these kind of things. We are inviting people to eat from a diseased tree that leads to that. Now let me pause there and introduce a second tree that grows well together, called toleration. Part of you living your truth means me respecting your truth and actually honoring and celebrating your truth, and we call it tolerance. And my friends, I think this is a parallel diseased tree. So now there's no room for us to say, hey, actually, I really am convinced from the clear teaching of the Bible that God does have a good design for sexuality and marriage. There's no room for that because this tolerance tree, often called don't judge me, as Jeremy unpacked the other day, there's no room for helpful correction. There's no room to establish, hey, here actually is a truth, a very plain, identified, non-arguable truth. And these two trees, you live your truth and tolerance or don't judge me, they flourish together. I think they're full of really dangerous fruit. What does that look like? Less than like an out there cultural kind of conversation, more than in here conversation. That looks like we will shy away from really meaningful relationships because there's no room for Christian correction. But in the last 3 weeks, I've had several people come to me and share really helpful, judgmental things about my life. And I needed them to do so. One of them being my wife. Hey, you don't speak like that in this house. You don't speak like that at all. I was really mad at first. So let me be angry about some stuff. What is she doing? She's saying, hey, you don't get to live your truth in this house. And in this house, there actually is lots of room for judgment. Because when judgment is applied through God's good design, it actually leads to life. Hey, look at that. It's a hard road. It's a narrow gate, but it leads to life. And if we become a church that eats from trees of tolerance and living our own truth, we'll never be the church that God has made us to be, because there will be no room for clear, objective truth and helpful Christian correction. And my friends, those are two things that we are all desperately in need of in our lives. Plainly, we will never be who God has made us to be without the help of those who see in us what we could never see. But I think we eat from these trees even subconsciously because they're just so prolific in our culture. You live your truth. There's no room for judgment. The trees of individualism, truth, and tolerance. I think we need to be really careful. And probably just to coach a little bit, what I don't think the response is like, go grab your chainsaws, we're cutting down trees in the culture today. Like, let's go tell them all they're wrong and go to hell. Like, that's not the answer here. I've rarely seen people come to faith with someone else holding a chainsaw. But I have seen people come to faith by someone offering better fruit. By someone saying, hey, can I actually show you what meaningful relationship looks like in the long haul? Because I do have friends that have eaten from these trees for long times. I've eaten from them in a variety of ways, but really lived their life shaped by them, and they're lonely. And they feel a profound sense of insecurity, with no real sense of robust identity and security of who someone else says they are. And what I hope to be, and what I hope we are as a church, is people who simply come and offer better fruit. There's a moment in John chapter 6 where Jesus has just said some really hard words about eating his flesh and drinking his blood. And this is why, we can't just be super attractive as a church because we say things like that. Like, hey, Jesus said those things, and that's kind of tough and really strange. And there was a large crowd that was following Jesus in John chapter 6, and it says many of them turned and walked away. And Jesus turns to his disciples and says, hey, are you guys going to walk too? I love Peter's response. He says, Jesus, where else would we go? For you have words of eternal life. Peter had tasted a better fruit. He knew that it led to life. And Peter would actually, we'll see in the book of Acts as we start in just a few weeks here, Peter would go and give the rest of his life to sharing this good fruit with others. Why? Because he tasted that which changed his life. Good fruit will do that to you. I look at a church, many of you who have tasted good fruit, some of you for the first time in this church family. Your whole lives are radically changed because of it. I'll just do this trusted relationship. I think of John and Marissa, who tasted good fruit for the first time in a church family. I'm just blown away realizing this last week again that this is their first church. They've never known another church. And how many of us have been handed really beautiful fruit from one of them? Like, how many of us have experienced the joy and goodness of God through John and Clarissa McDonald? What happened? They just tasted better fruit. So let's be good fruit providers for those that God has placed around us. Let's put down the chainsaws. We don't need those. Let's just hand out really good fruit. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves who will recognize them by their fruits. You have to be really careful of the voices that you listen to. I'll say this last thing, then I'll move to the next point. When you're choosing people to follow, pay close attention to the relationships around them. Are they connected and marked by honesty and vulnerability? Do they seem challenging and distant and cold? Do they have close friends in their geographical space that speak highly of them, that honor them, and speak of how they've blessed them? Or they seem disjointed and marked by conflict or pain? Before you start listening to someone's voice, pay close attention to the relationships around them. That's often where you'll find the fruit, and you'll be able to tell, hey, this is really good. I'm reminded just by a row of young ladies here. And before you pick a partner, pay really close attention to the fruit of their life. Pay really close attention to the fruit of their life. Because that'll be the tree that you'll be eating from for the rest of your life until death do you part. So pay really close attention to the fruit of their life. And I would actually plead a step further, go ask other people what they think about that guy. And if they don't have older men and women who can speak honorably of that person, you should probably just keep moving. God will take care of you in your singleness. He will. He's a good dad. Okay? All right. That was the off script. That's what we're praying for that this morning. Verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. Frankly, I didn't really want to teach this text. I should have brought in a guest for this Sunday. If we're going to make it safely to the other side, we need to treat others how we want to be treated. We need to enter by the narrow gate. We need to do the hard thing. We need to be really intentional about the voices we listen to. We need to ask, hey, what tree am I eating from? And then lastly, we need to see how the story ends. We need to see how the story ends. Come back with me now to the Zambezi. We've been on the raft for a good amount of time now, and we have successfully traversed a variety of rapids. My brother and I feel closer than I'd ever felt before, because it felt like, wow, we've just survived something that I didn't know if we'd survive or not. Like, I really do love you. It doesn't matter what happened years ago. Like, I love you and I need you. Hold on to me, brother. It's like this Sam and Frodo moment. And we've got a few rapids left, and some of them are the biggest on the river. And we're coming up on this rapid. It looks more like a waterfall. If you've seen Emperor's New Groove, like that's kind of the vibe. And I'm like, hey, this might be it. Well, sure enough, to my great surprise, gravity did not win in this moment. And I went flying like a little spring chicken out of the raft into the Zambezi River, full of crocodiles and hippos. And I imagine I'd be a delightful treat. And so I am a confident swimmer. I feel fine swimming. But there is a big difference between a lap pool and the Zambezi. And it doesn't matter how big or buoyant you are, that water is stronger than you. I get thrown under the rapids. I've got a life vest on, certainly, and the Lord did make me pretty buoyant. And I get thrown under the rapids, and there is no swimming. You have been thrown into a Class 5 washing machine. And I'm getting flipped and turned, and you cannot do anything. Now, there was a voice in the beginning that reminded me of an instruction. Be still and do not go like this. I said, well, that sounds way too hard. I'm freaking out. I am losing my mind trying to grab a hold of anything that could provide security. And there's no grabbing a hold of anything. There is nothing but being taken by the force of the river. I'm getting lower Well, that's the wrong direction, and I can do nothing about it. I start to see the light of the surface. At least I thought it was that. It might have been Jesus. And I think, okay, I'm almost there. Like I'm about to make it. And sure enough, then the next part of the rapid sucks me back under. And I don't like being underwater. God made me to breathe oxygen. And I think that was his good design. I don't like being underwater. I get a little claustrophobic in that space. And now, like, I'm at the point where I'm like, I could hold my breath that long. That point is long gone. Now I'm thinking about my poor mother. I'm going, wow, she's going to be super sad. Like, I'm definitely the favorite son. And like, this is not good. I'm thinking about my brother, some tensions in our relationship. Like, man, I really wish I'd asked for forgiveness about this, or I wish I'd been nicer about this. Like, I'm having those kind of thoughts underwater at this moment. And I'll straighten out a little bit, like that voice that stopped flailing. All of a sudden, I feel something, and I grab it, and I reach up, and there's a rescue kayak just above me. He said some bad words, and then said, I've never seen such big white man eyes. I was under there for a while, partner. And he looks at me and said this. He said, you had a good 10 seconds before I was worried. What? What are you talking about? You see, with our convoy, probably 3 to 5 rafts, there were 6 rescue kayakers that were going in between us and all around us the entire journey. And they knew us on the raft. And they knew how many people were supposed to be on every raft. And they knew if one of them went missing. That rescue kayaker knew me. Not personally, we didn't have a relationship, but after about 5 rapids, you feel like you do. And he knew to watch for me as I had gone underwater. And unbeknownst to me, he's in a kayak counting before he gets concerned. You were fine. That did not feel fun. That's your first time on the river, sweet boy. It's not the Woodlands anymore. And I felt an overwhelming sense of being seen, known, and protected. By someone who knew me. And in a moment where I could not rescue myself, there was a rescuer above the chaos who knew exactly where I was. And I could do nothing, but he was in charge of the trip the whole time. Jesus says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. So you and I should ask the question, so what's the will of God? What is the will of my Father who is in heaven? If Jesus just said,